pay attention, I'm going to say, because I'm pretty convinced I'm right what I'm saying, is one of the most influential managers in the last 20 years. There is no team playing in the way they play. It's like, it's unique. I had the feeling when I arrived, the impact it would have in the Premier League.
Pep Guardiola, the man with 11 league titles across 3 countries, the manager most people alive would call the greatest of all time, stood in front of the cameras after winning the Premier League and said this about another coach: he's one of the most influential managers in the last 20 years. There is no team playing the way they play. It's unique. He changed the cuisine. He changed the cuisine. Guardiola compared him to Ferran Adrià, the chef who reinvented cooking itself. That's the title of this video, and here's the promise. I'm going to prove Guardiola was right, that Roberto De Zerbi genuinely rewired how modern football is played. And then I'm going to show you the strange part. The man himself refuses to accept any of it. I'm anything but a philosopher, he says. Why do you think I work? To win. This isn't a video about tactics. It's about the paradox of changing everyone's game while insisting you changed nothing. So, who is this man that the 2 greatest managers of the era can't stop talking about? Roberto De Zerbi. Born in Brescia, Italy, 1979. A modest playing career in the lower and middle tiers of Italian football, a creative midfielder who was never a star. Nothing about his life as a player said this man will change the game. And here's the first surprise, the thing that makes his story so odd. De Zerbi has barely won anything. A Ukrainian Super Cup with Shakhtar. No Premier League. No Champions League. No Serie A. His most famous job, at Brighton, ended without a trophy. His next at Marseille ended in February 2026 by mutual consent after a 5-0 humiliation by PSG. Sit with that contradiction. Guardiola, a serial winner, calls a man with almost no trophies one of the most influential coaches of the last 2 decades. How does that happen? That's the stake of this video. Because influence and silverware are supposed to travel together. De Zerbi broke them apart. He became proof that you can bend the entire sport around your ideas and still walk away without the medals, and that maybe, just maybe, influence is the rarer thing. To understand why De Zerbi mattered, you have to understand the era he walked into. By the early 2020s, football had 2 dominant religions. Guardiola's possession game, control the ball, control the space, positional perfection. And Klopp's gegenpressing, win the ball back the instant you lose it, attack in chaos. Between them, these 2 men had defined how elite football was played for over a decade. The unquestioned rule underneath both was simple. When your goalkeeper has the ball and the opponent presses high, you get rid of it. Go long. Safety first. Don't take risks in front of your own goal, because a mistake there is a goal against you. Every coach on earth accepted this as basic common sense. De Zerbi looked at that common sense and called it something nobody else did. He called it gambling. In his words, to me, launching the ball upfield and trying to win the second ball is the equivalent of gambling. And since I don't like to bet, I prefer to train a team to bring the ball carefully out of defense. Read that again. Everyone else thought playing out from the back under pressure was the risky option. De Zerbi thought hoofing it long was the risky option because you surrender the ball to chance. He didn't invent playing out from the back. He inverted the entire risk calculation behind it. And that changed everything. Here's how radical the idea was in practice, because this is the part that made coaches around the world lean forward. De Zerbi's teams would do something that looked insane. The goalkeeper would put his foot on the ball, literally stop it dead, and just wait, inviting the opposition striker to charge in. Defenders would take deliberately slow, short passes to each other, 10 yards from their own goal, with attackers snapping at their heels. To the untrained eye, it looked reckless, even suicidal. But there was a cold logic underneath. The whole point was to lure the press. Every opponent who ran forward to win the ball left a space behind them. And the instant De Zerbi's team broke that first line of pressure, one clever pass through the trap, they had numerical superiority and acres of grass running at a defense that was now hopelessly out of shape. He built this at Sassuolo in Italy, a small club he turned into one of the most watchable teams in Serie A. Refined it at Shakhtar, and then took it to Brighton in September 2022, a club with a fraction of the budget of the Giants. And here's the crucial thing about the origin of this idea. It didn't come from ego. It didn't come from wanting to look clever or philosophical. It came from that risk calculation, from a man who genuinely believes the controlled way is the safe way. He wasn't trying to be an artist. He was trying to remove chance from football. The beauty was a byproduct. The revolution was, in his own mind, just risk management. That's the seed of the whole paradox. The most romantic, revolutionary football of its era was invented by a man who thought he was simply being careful. Now watch the validation arrive, and watch who it comes from. De Zerbi's very first game as Brighton manager, October 2022, was away at Anfield against Jurgen Klopp's Liverpool. It ended 3-3, with Leandro Trossard scoring a hat-trick. The man who would later admit he couldn't coach De Zerbi's style was his very first opponent. And after that game, Klopp said something telling: "We have no idea what to expect." That uncertainty never left.
So I have to say, I cannot respect more, could not respect more what he's doing. Honestly, I'm a real supporter of it. I'm a football lover, and if somebody comes in, the impact he has on football should not be underestimated.
Across their meetings, Klopp's Liverpool scored plenty against Brighton, but they could not reliably beat them. A club like Brighton, going toe-to-toe with a Klopp super team and coming away unbeaten repeatedly. That's not supposed to happen. That's the tactic working.
Brighton had now, I think, a few results which didn't go exactly in their way, but that's a completely normal situation in the development. They had a lot of changes, lost top players, one of them we got, and still played incredible football, and we could watch a little bit before the game. We couldn't see the first half when they were 2-0 down. I saw the second half, and they put Marseille massively under pressure, and got a point there. So we expect a really tough game against one of the best sides in the league, best coached team in the league. But I'm really looking forward to the game, because we have to put a few things right, because you can look once silly, but you should not look at twice. The second time silly still can happen, because they are really good, but we have to do better, and we will give it a proper try to do.
Then came the words that make up the spine of this video. Guardiola, after winning the 2022-23 Premier League title, delivered the line: De Zerbi is one of the most influential managers in the last 20 years. His team is unique, and the killer, he changed the cuisine. And it's later reported that Guardiola publicly admitted he has learned from De Zerbi, an extraordinarily rare admission from most decorated manager of his generation. Then Klopp, the co-inventor of modern pressing, made his confession: "The way they play, I couldn't coach that. It goes against my personality, but it's a good watch. It's very demanding on the players." And later, almost like a farewell between equals, I told De Zerbi to keep turning the football world upside down. I will watch it from some distance. I respect so much what he's doing. Think about the weight of that. Klopp isn't saying he's good. He's saying I am not capable of doing what he does. The man who reshaped pressing football, admitting there's a version of the game beyond his own personality. Here's the rehook, though, the thing to hold on to. Every one of these validations is about how his teams play, not what they won. Guardiola, Klopp, sporting directors like Marseille's Mehdi Benatia, who called him unique and said there's something of Guardiola in him, they're all praising the ideas. And the trophy cabinet stays almost empty. Keep that gap in mind, because it's about to become the whole story. Because here's where the paradox turns painful. The man Guardiola says changed the cuisine has spent the last 2 years watching his own results fall apart. At Brighton, the beautiful football never converted into a trophy, and De Zerbi left in 2024. At Marseille, he took them to a second-place finish and back into the Champions League. Genuinely impressive. But then the 2025-26 Champions League ended in a group stage exit on goal difference, and the domestic campaign unraveled. His final game in charge was that 5-0 defeat at PSG, Marseille's worst ever loss to their rivals. Mutual consent, gone after 18 months. And this is exactly the criticism that has followed De Zerbi everywhere, that his football is very demanding on the players, Klopp's own words, and that the demands can break down. The high-wire act of building out from your own 6-yard box is glorious when it works. When it fails catastrophically, and it concedes soft goals. Marseille under De Zerbi were, in the words of one report, imperfect and inconsistent, but capable of brilliance, scintillating in attack, leaky at the back. So now the central tension of the whole video is fully exposed. Guardiola says he changed the game. Klopp says he can't replicate him. And the scoreboard again and again says not enough. This is the complication that makes De Zerbi one of football's most fascinating figures. Is a manager who influences everyone but wins little a genius or a beautiful failure. And notice how his own words suddenly cut deeper. My friends in journalism often wrote that I live for the game and don't care about results. That's not reality. Why do you think I work? To win. That's not a philosopher talking. That's a man almost wounded by the idea that he's admired for beauty rather than victory. He doesn't want to be Ferran Adrià. He wants to lift trophies, and the sport keeps handing him respect instead. So, which of them is telling the truth? Guardiola, who says he changed the cuisine. Klopp, who says he can't be copied. Or De Zerbi himself, who says he's no philosopher and just wants to win. Here's the resolution, and it's that all three are true at once, which is exactly what makes him remarkable. De Zerbi did change the cuisine. Look around modern football and you'll see teams everywhere baiting the press, goalkeepers with a foot on the ball, defenders inviting pressure to break it. That grammar is now common. He normalized an idea the whole sport once thought was madness. Guardiola is right. Klopp is also right. De Zerbi's version specifically, the extremity of it, the nerve it demands, really is bound to his personality in a way that can't just be lifted and pasted onto another manager. It's not a system you download. It's a temperament. And De Zerbi is right too. And this is the heart of it. He never set out to be a revolutionary. He set out to remove risk and win football matches. The revolution was something other people saw in him and named. He gave the sport a new idea. The sport gave the idea a philosophy he never asked for. Which lands us on the real question this video exists to ask. When someone changes the game without ever meaning to, is the revolution theirs, or does it belong to the people who interpreted it? Guardiola gave it the name Cuisine. Klopp gave it the label impossible to coach. De Zerbi just gave it the football. So who actually owns the legacy? The man who created it, or the men who gave it meaning? And there's a final, almost cruel twist in the timeline. In March 2026, weeks after being sacked by Marseille, De Zerbi was appointed head coach of Tottenham Hotspur on a 5-year contract. The Premier League, the exact stage where Guardiola and Klopp crowned his influence, handed him another chance. Not because of what he'd won, because of what he represents. He got one of England's biggest jobs on the strength of his ideas, in spite of his results. That is the purest proof of the paradox. In modern football, De Zerbi has become that rare thing, a man hired for his influence, not his trophies. So let's go back to where we started. Guardiola, he changed the cuisine. And De Zerbi, I'm anything but a philosopher. Why do you think I work? To win. Here's what I think that tension really tells us. There are two kinds of greatness in football. There's the greatness of the scoreboard, trophies, titles, the things that go in the record books. And there's the greatness of ideas, the invisible kind, the kind that changes how everyone else thinks, that shows up in other managers' teams for decades after you're gone. De Zerbi has almost none of the first kind, and an enormous amount of the second. And the fascinating, slightly tragic thing is that he'd probably trade all the second kind for a bit more of the first. He doesn't want to be admired. He wants to win, and the sport keeps insisting on admiring him instead. Maybe that's the definition of a true original. Not someone who sets out to change the game. Those people are usually just chasing attention. But someone so committed to their own logic, so unwilling to gamble, so himself, that the game quietly reorganizes around them while they're just trying to win the next match.
Can't speak highly enough of him. He's been so good. Every player in the squad has taken to him.
Guardiola saw it. Klopp felt it. De Zerbi denies it. And all three are right. So here's the question I'll leave you with. What matters more in the end, the trophies you lift, or the way you change how the game is played forever? Because one of those fades from memory, and one of those doesn't. And Roberto De Zerbi, the man with the empty cabinet and the borrowed philosophy, might have quietly chosen the one that lasts. Tell me in the comments, is De Zerbi a genius or a beautiful failure? I genuinely want to know where you land.